What's going on, Dolphin fans? It is your boy Dillon, and so I'm making this video because, well, I didn't make one yesterday, so I'd like to apologize to you guys for that. I had kind of a crazy day yesterday, so I wasn't able to make a video after day 3 of the draft. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to cover that. I'm going to cover the entire draft class as well as all the guys so far that we've gotten as undrafted free agents to this point. And I mean, look, you know, there's bodies, you know, for sure. There's bodies that are going to be in camp. You know, and who knows? I mean, there's some impressive guys in here to say the least. You know, there's definitely some guys who did some good things that were in college when they were there, and you know, from the draft picks that we got and the you know, the undrafted free agents as well. So I mean, there's definitely some good stuff. But you know, again, my biggest issue is that, or I mean, a couple things really. One is that I don't think that they actually, man, I don't think that they took the right approach, like throughout the entire offseason, and a lot of the things that they did in the offseason obviously affected what they did in the draft. And so, like, at the end of the draft in round 7, we used our 2 picks on a fullback and a running back. First of all, we haven't had a fullback in God knows when. Obviously, that's a you know, a thing from the Patriots. So obviously Brian Flores is bringing it from there, which I don't mind. I don't mind having a fullback. But the thing is, if that's the case, like, if you wanted a fullback, you just picked up another running back. We have a few running backs on the roster, and then we brought in 2 extra tight ends. We have a gang of tight ends. Why do you need to actually get like a full-on fullback? Use one of those guys. We have other areas of need. And the fact that we even needed like a running back or anything at all, period, was, you know, because of us. We decided to let Frank Gore go and Sonoris Perry, right? Like, these guys that were good and reliable and you know, so on and so forth. So, you know, it was partly self-inflicted, right? It didn't we didn't need to, you know, have those holes that were created later on. You know, wide receiver is the same thing. We took hits there that we didn't need to take. But yeah, I know a lot of people disagree with me, which actually I'd like to quickly comment on that. I noticed that my last video got a bunch of dislikes, which I find fascinating, to be quite honest with you. And you know what, man? I've had one hell of a life. I'm 30 years old at this point. I have had one hell of a life, and it has been some shit. I've been through some shit, continue to go through some shit to this day. My life is never-ending craziness and chaos, and that's, you know, but I'm a fighter, and I survive, and I make it through. I always do, always will. But I mean, I just, look, at the end of the day, I think that they could have handled this so much better. And I think that ultimately it's going to end up backfiring on them, most notably because of the fact that at least, and again, look, this is my perspective, right? This is my evaluation and how I foresee and what I see, you know, happening based off of everything that has happened. Right? And it could change, and they could prove me wrong, and I hope they do. But right now, as I see it, my analysis of this is that it's going to end up in failure, because the likelihood of them having anything above a 500 season for the next few years is highly unlikely for a myriad of reasons. We've gone over them, you know, and a lot of it, again, has been self-inflicted in things that they've done in this draft, right? So, and this offseason as well. And so I think that if they really did want to be competitive this year, as they said and have continued to say, and if they wanted to build the team for the long term, I don't think that this is the best course of action to take. And so we'll see how the facts bear out over the next few seasons. So real quick though, I wanted to make note, or I made note of something. Let's see. How do I want to do this? So actually, let me, before I do that, let me go ahead and give you the full draft class. Round 1, number 13 overall was Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle out of Clemson. We didn't have a second round pick in this year's draft because we gave that away to get Josh Rosen. So then in round 3 at number 78 overall, we get Michael Dieter, guard from Wisconsin. We apparently don't have a 4th round pick in this draft either. I think that was in there somewhere. I'm not sure exactly how that came to be. I'll have to, check on that to get the specifics, but apparently we didn't have a 4th round pick either. So I'm assuming we traded that away in some form or fashion. So we didn't pick again until round 5. At 151 overall, Andrew Van Ginkel, linebacker out of Wisconsin. I believe he's an outside linebacker, if I'm not mistaken. So the good there is that apparently, he would scheme fit, right? Considering we're trying to do a 4-3, 3-4, hybrid defense, but linebacker was certainly not an area of need that high. It really wasn't an area of need at all. We have Raekwon McMillan, Jerome Baker, we have Stephon Anthony, we have Kiko Alonso, a lot of really good players that are young, productive. Kiko Alonso was super productive for us last year. 3 forced fumbles, 3 interceptions, over 100 and something tackles. He was killing it last year. He was one of the bright spots on the team last year. So anybody who says that he was a weakness or a failing is ridiculous. And then the 2 young linebackers from the past few drafts that we invested in, right, with draft capital, at, pretty decent spots too. Well, what about them, right? So keep developing them. You have a former 1st round pick. He hasn't done a lot. Agreed. You still have Mike Hall. You got a ton of guys. Now, I'm not saying don't bring in bodies. Bring in undrafted free agents at that position. You already brought in guys. You brought in Jerome Elliott, the outside linebacker pass rusher from the AAF. You brought in a bunch of guys. You have guys there. Why do you need to take a linebacker with a draft pick, a 5th round draft pick? So that's my perspective, right? So this is how I think these are, I'm explaining to you the ways that I think that they mishandled this, right? Then you go finally in round 6, we address the offensive line again, which is our biggest weakness right now. Isaiah Prince, again, an offensive tackle from Ohio State. So that's good, right? But again, we should have had a 1st round offensive lineman, and then probably another one in the 3rd round. So we could have probably still had Michael Dieter. No, but matter of fact, though, I actually have, I checked into it, and we could have, if we would have done things differently, we actually could have gotten Will Grier in the 3rd round. Because both of the pick, or because of the pick that we would have had would have been before, and the pick that we used in the 3rd round was before Will Grier went. But our original 3rd round pick, no matter what, it was before Will Grier went. So we could have had a round 1. I'll get into that in a minute. We could have had a round 1 offensive lineman, a round 2 defensive lineman, and then we could have gotten Will Grier for quarterback. That's the route that I would have gone. But I'll get more into that in a second. Let me finish up the draft. So in round 7, then we take the fullback at 233 that I mentioned, Chandler Cox from Auburn. And then round 7, we take Myles Gaskin, the running back from Washington, at 234. So we had back-to-back picks. Now, a good thing for him is he was the first player in Pac-12 history to rush for 1,000 yards in 4 seasons. That is super impressive. Absolutely. And he could definitely turn into a weapon. Definitely a good guy to have in camp, and to bring along and develop. So absolutely, you get credit there. But again, that kind of goes to, one, we didn't need to have such a big hole in the running back room to begin with, because they shouldn't have, lost Sonoris Perry and Frank Gore. Obviously, after the old regime got fired, that was far more likely and probably a big reason why it happened. But again, you guys know how I feel about that. But so one, the hole didn't need to be there. And two, well, what about the young guys that you have now? Kenyon Drake and Kalen Ballage. What about them? Right? What does that say about them? Because you did draft this guy. It is in the 7th round. And, that tweet that I actually just told you about that says he has 5,323 career rushing yards, that he ran for over 1,000 yards in 4 seasons, that comes from the Miami Dolphins directly. So they're hyping this dude up. So they like him. And good reason to. He's got credentials and so on and so forth. We still don't know how he's going to transition into the NFL. It does say something that, nobody took him until the 7th round, considering all of that. So there has to be some kind of concern. But if you really thought that, if you're as high on him as it appears to be, right, because they're really hyping him up, well, what does that say about the other 2 running backs? Or how you feel about them, or what have you? And then, I mean, look, I'm just saying, right? Maybe it's nothing. This is just my perspective. I'm speculating a lot here, but these are all things that could come into play at some point, right? And so then what? So like if, if he starts to come on at some point during the season and Kenyon Drake gets to the end of his contract, so you're just not going to sign him then? You're going to let him hit free agency? You're going to let him go somewhere else? I mean, so there you have it. So anyway, I did, because I was curious, I looked into some things. I've already kind of given you a little bit of information on that. But so to back up some of my arguments for why they should have done things differently, right? Because I told you guys at the end of round 1, I actually felt really good about it. Overall, I was like, this is not how I would have done it, but I think all in all, they did okay, and the guy that they got is a solid guy, right? He's a good character guy. He seems like he's really smart, hardworking. He's got a lot of talent, and you needed a guy on the defensive line. So I was like, okay, and I was giving them the benefit of the doubt, right? I was trying to find, it wasn't hard to find positives. There were plenty of them, right? And then so I was giving them credit. Day 2, they completely lost me. And from then on, right, they completely lost me with the Josh Rosen trade and all of that. So again, also, just as another side note, I noticed that, or I saw a tweet that says that we have the most dead money this year, cap space, dead money this year. Now, obviously, we're going to end up having like hella money next year, which is wonderful. Of course, we need to sign Xavier and now. And they can do it if they choose to. But we do have a ton of dead money, and that's in big part because we got rid of guys and traded guys like Ryan Tannehill that we shouldn't have, and ate up a ton of dead money. But then we bring in Ryan Fitzpatrick, pay him $10 million, $11 million, whatever it is. We already have 2 other young quarterbacks on the roster, but then we trade and give away draft capital this year and next year to get Josh Rosen, who, although it's not entirely his fault, of course, without doubt, he didn't do very well. And I actually have, because I was curious about this too, which I'll get to in a minute, I did a comparison between his rookie year and Ryan Tannehill's rookie year. I know people are going to hate that, but I love it. So I'm going to give that to you. The stats though, the facts, okay? And so anyway, we do all this. We give away our draft capital. We get this guy. So essentially, we take a 2nd round quarterback. We could have gotten Will Grier in the 3rd, and we could have gotten 2 of the better offensive and defensive linemen in this draft in rounds 1 and 2. And so I did some calculations. So in round 1, there were 3 quarterbacks taken. There were 7 defensive ends. And 6 defensive tackles, obviously including the one that we took, Christian Wilkins. There were 2 linebackers, 2 tight ends, 1 offensive tackle, 1 guard, 1 center, 2 safeties, 3 tackles. Oh wait, I'm sorry. So that's 4. There were 4 tackles taken altogether. 1 running back, 2 wide receivers, and a cornerback. Okay. Now, a good portion of those defensive linemen, I told you, because there was a run on defensive linemen in the draft. So the first pick, Arizona Cardinals, they get Kyler Murray, and then they just drafted Rosen last year, 10th overall. Obviously his stats weren't great last year, which was in part because he was sacked a hell of a lot and the offensive line sucked, but he's not going to get much better here, and so it's kind of a waste in that regard as well. But, what does it say if they're so willing to get rid of their first round pick from the year before and eat some of their money for his contract, and then they get, a 5th round pick from us from next year and our 2nd round pick. So they actually, a lot of people are saying that, we got pulled the wool over the eyes of the Cardinals. I think they actually kind of got up on us. But it says a lot that they're willing to just get rid of this dude, right? Like that. So look, man, it is what it is. But anyway, and then so Nick Bosa goes 2 overall. Quinnen Williams goes 3 overall to the Jets. Defensive end Clelin Ferrell goes 4th overall. And then one of the top linebackers goes 5th. Daniel Jones at 6th. Then defensive end Josh Allen at 7. Tight end at 8. Ed Oliver, defensive tackle at 9. Linebacker Devin Bush at 10. Offensive tackle Jonah Williams at 11. Defensive end Rashawn Gary at 12. And then we pick. So my point there is not only were there 7 defensive ends and 6 defensive tackles total taken in the entire first round. Those are the 2 highest categories. So clearly there was a run on defensive linemen in the first round, right? That's 13 altogether of defensive linemen. Now there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, no. I'm sorry. 6. 6 of those 13. So about half of that major run on defensive linemen in the first round came before our pick. And so that's a major reason why it would have been smarter to either trade down, or either way, whether you trade down or not, because I understand it is possible they couldn't get a trade partner, right? And again, the best offensive lineman in the draft, or one of the top 2, 3 offensive linemen in the draft, the one that I wanted, that I thought was probably the best for us, was center Garrett Bradbury, who was picked at 18 by the Minnesota Vikings. I have said since before the draft, ideally, you trade back to about 17 was the number that just kept popping into my head for some reason. It just felt good. But, whatever, 15, 16, 17, trade back a little bit, accrue more draft capital. Instead, they decided to give away draft capital this draft, because we didn't have a 4th round pick after it was all said and done either, right? And we lose a 5th round for next year, so they just decided to give away draft capital instead of accruing more. But even if you couldn't get there, you still could have taken him. Jonah Williams did go at 11, but he was the only offensive lineman to go in before us. And he was only one of 6 in total. Now that's a good few offensive linemen, sure, but we could have gotten one of the best ones at our pick, and then we could have gotten, a more 2nd round defensive tackle, because all of the best defensive ends and defensive tackles were already off the board, right? And then, so then you get into round 2, right? And then, so you've already got now, after our pick, you lose Jonah Williams off the board before our pick. And then after our pick, you lose guard Christian Lindstrom from Boston College. You lose center Garrett Bradbury, North Carolina State, and number 18 to the Minnesota Vikings. Then you lose tackle Andre Dillard at number 22 to Philly. Tackle Titus Howard to Houston at 23. Let's see. And then tackle Caleb McGarry from Washington to Atlanta at 31. So you lose those guys from the offensive line in the first round. And then in round 2, you lose 4 more tackles, another guard, 2 more centers. Okay, right? And then there was a run on wide receivers and cornerbacks. Cornerback was, I'd say, the 4th biggest need for this team going into the draft. Defense or offensive line, defensive line, quarterback, and then cornerback. So we lose all the best corners in the second round. We don't really need wide receivers, bring them in as undrafted free agents. Even though we did make unnecessary holes in the wide receiver room, by letting like Danny Amendola go or whatever. But they obviously did sign Devontae Parker back, whatever. But you lose all these guys. So now at this point, you're out of, really any good options for the offensive line. So, initially when I saw that they had made a trade at 2, I was like, okay, maybe they traded back. They got more draft picks, whatever, because they didn't, at this point have any good offensive linemen that they really wanted. They didn't think taking a quarterback in this draft at number 2 was right, because it wasn't. That's too high. And, almost everybody before the draft, a lot of people now during the draft, talked about how this is a terrible draft class, and a big reason why I did not advocate for chasing one or taking one higher than the third round. But we could have ended up getting Will Grier. He went at, just real quick, skipping ahead a little bit. Oh, he went at the number 100th pick. Will Grier was a compensatory pick to the Carolina Panthers in the 3rd round. We picked in the 3rd round at 78, 15 overall. We could have gotten Will Grier in the 2nd round. If we would have gotten Garrett Bradbury in the 1st, we could have gotten one of the, 2nd round talent defensive linemen in the 2nd round, because there was only one defensive end and one defensive tackle that went in the 2nd round. The run goes on the quarterbacks or cornerbacks, wide receivers, and then safeties too. There were 4 safeties off the board. So back 7, wide receivers, the secondary wide receivers, and then the 2nd round offensive lineman came off the board, right? And so we could have gotten Will Grier, which I think would have been a far better investment. He would have been cheaper. He's younger. Obviously there's unknowns about him, but he's worth it in the 3rd round, to take him in the 3rd round instead of Josh Rosen in the 2nd round, essentially, right? So it would have made more sense to do that. That's, like I said, that's my perspective on it. I think that they just did not handle this in the smartest fashion. They could have done so much better. But we'll see. Like I said, look, again, at the end of the day, they have time to prove me wrong. I could be totally wrong. Maybe they figure out how to put all this together with a 1st-year head coach and a completely brand new staff, and damn near an entirely new team and a completely new front office minus Chris Grier, right? But with more heads in the and that's the thing is how did that play out? Who knows, right? We don't have that kind of information really. But how did that play out? How much did Reggie McKenzie have a say in this? How much did what's his name? Something Allen. God damn it, I'm forgetting his name. Marvin Allen. How much did he have a say, right? And because everybody was giving Stephen Ross credit for having streamlined his front office, and then he actually has more heads in there, right? So I don't think that they handled this well at all. I hope that they do prove me wrong, but we'll see. I think that from the moment that they fired Adam Gase and everything that the majority of everything, because there were some things that they did that I actually did like, throughout the offseason, albeit not very much. But, you know, the majority of the things that they've done over the course of, you know, this time, my perspective is based off of the data, the facts, the information that I have, it computes out to being a much higher probability that the next few years are going to be dismal. And I don't think that this fan base or the ownership is going to give, them the opportunity if we have sub 500, seasons, or worse, if we go like 3-13 and all this, that, and the other, and then especially if, they're doing these big things, right? Like doing this major trade for Josh Rosen, and then if they take a, Tua Tagovailoa, or what's the other one? Gilbert, something. I can't remember all these fucking guys, man. One of the quarterbacks next year, or Justin Herbert, I think it is. Jesus Christ. Anyway, right? And then invest high in that guy, right? Which would be silly then, because then why would you have brought Josh Rosen in if you're going to take a quarterback high next year? Like, none of it makes any fucking sense, but apparently people don't care about that, right? It's like, whatever. Anyway, so, but they have time to prove me wrong. And again, in 3 years, if we have dismal seasons, I'll still be advocating to give this regime another 2 seasons just to see if they can, get it figured out. See if they can take what they've done and mold it into something. But I'm betting that everybody else and all the people that come in here hating on me are going to be like, oh no, they need to be fired. They're going to be trying to crucify these motherfuckers before the end because it didn't go how they wanted it to, as fast as they wanted to. So, anyway, real quick, like I said, I did a comparison between Ryan Tannehill and Josh Rosen in their rookie seasons, right? I checked their stats. So first of all, Ryan Tannehill played in, so first and foremost, Ryan Tannehill was the 8th overall pick, obviously, in 2012. Josh Rosen was the 10th overall pick. So Ryan Tannehill was picked, just to give you all the facts and the full complete context, Ryan Tannehill was picked 2 picks earlier. Okay. But, obviously Ryan Tannehill, his entire college career, he didn't play quarterback because they already had an established quarterback at Texas A&M. So he did the right thing and the team thing and played wide receiver because he's athletic and because he can do that, and he killed it, right? And then he came in and killed it at quarterback when he did take over. But I think that's gave him more tools and more weapons because he knew the perspective of a wide receiver, and he understands routes and, breaks and all that stuff, right? He knows the nuance of being a wide receiver, so he can help. And that's a big reason why in every single offseason he would throw with his wide receivers. Anyway, right? So, but they both come in, they both play in their rookie seasons. Ryan Tannehill played 16 games. Josh Rosen played 14 games. So obviously, Ryan Tannehill played more games, 2 more games. He had 282 attempts out of 282 completions out of 484 attempts. Josh Rosen had 217 completions on 393 attempts in 14 games. So Josh Rosen played 2 less games. Now both of these quarterbacks were highly sacked. I believe both of them in their first seasons were the most sacked quarterback that year, right? But Ryan Tannehill had, a good number more completions. He had a good number more attempts. His completion percentage was better at 58.3%. Obviously not great. You want it for sure over 60, but he was every year after that. And despite being the most sacked quarterback in the league that year, his rookie year, he got close. Josh Rosen didn't come as close. He was only 55.2% completion percentage. Ryan Tannehill, despite that, although 2 more games, threw for 3,294 yards, Josh Rosen threw for 2,278 yards. So obviously about 1,000 less. That's pretty significant. Ryan Tannehill had a 6.8 average. Josh Rosen had a full point less, 5.8. Ryan Tannehill had 12 touchdowns to 13 interceptions. Not great, obviously, although after that year, he clearly did far better each and every year and almost had a 2-to-1, I believe, every year after that. Close. It was close on average. But he still did better than Josh Rosen, because Josh Rosen had one less touchdown at 11 and one more interception at 14. Now, to be fair, Josh Rosen in his first year did get sacked 10 more times at 45. Ryan Tannehill was sacked 35. But in their respective years, they were the most sacked quarterback at the time. But Tannehill got sacked more in the next few years. 58 times, I believe, was one of those years. But in the 40s, the next for 2 of those years, okay? And then he kept improving. Now, obviously, it was only Josh Rosen's first season last year, to be fair. So he does have an opportunity to improve and get better. But he's not going to really have that chance, I'm betting, for a few reasons. One, the offensive line is still either highly unproven or highly inadequate. And then you have the Ryan Fitzpatrick conversation, and then you have these other 2 guys that are just there, Luke Falk and Jake Ruddock. Well, what about them, right? And then you might even take a quarterback high next year. So what the fuck is going on here? You know, like, it's just a giant mess. Also, though, Ryan Tannehill had 49 rushes for a 4.3 average, 211 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Josh Rosen had less rushing attempts, 23, but he did have a higher rushing average at 6, so credit goes there, and 138 yards. So less yards overall, but he did have a higher average. And then he didn't have any touchdowns. Ryan Tannehill had 2. So as you can see, just in that comparison, Ryan Tannehill did better than Josh Rosen. So when you take all of this information, the fact that the Cardinals were so, eager and willing to get rid of him, right? And eat some of his contract, blah, 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 right? All these different things. I mean, I just don't think that they played this very well at all. That's my opinion. That is my perspective. I've given you, data and facts to support that. It is, y'all's, right, ability, choice to determine for yourself, and whether you agree or not. And I know I get a lot of people that don't agree. Story of my life. It's pretty common, actually. But I tend to be, without trying to, sound, it's hard to say something, like this. It's hard to be confident in yourself these days and just be like, yeah, I'm pretty good at being logical and, being able to see how things play out because of that. And so therefore, I'm pretty good at identifying some of these things, things like this before they happen and being right about it. Right. So, it's happened a lot in my life, but people tend to ignore me and then, whatever. So anyway, it is what it is. But like I said, I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong. I would love for them to get, above 500, somehow miraculously make it to the playoffs, whatever. But we'll see, and they got to prove it. But either way, one more time, and I'll wrap up on this. Even if they don't, and even if we have a terrible season for the next 3 years, even if we have a terrible season for the next 4 years, they should have the full 5 years of Brian Flores' contract without question. Give him that full amount of time to see if he can get it right one way or the other. So anyway, that's what oh, no, wait. Haha. I almost forgot, actually, to go through our list of undrafted free agents. Silly me. See, that's what happens, though, because I'm always my brain's always going like a million miles an hour. So as I'm talking through things, I remember like other points and other things that I want to make and how I tie it in, you know, because I'm always tying things in. Because look, man, I care about facts. And so I like to make sure that the things that I say are verifiable. I like to make sure that they're accurate and that they are backed up by stats and data and facts. So anyway, let me get to our undrafted free agents. Ryan Anderson, offensive tackle guard from Wake Forest. Kyron Brown, cornerback from Akron. Dion Calhoun, guard from Mississippi State. Javonte Dean, cornerback from Miami. Rookie minicamp invite. Yeah, so by the way, I saw reports that some of these guys were actually just given like the opportunity to try out. So I don't think that they're necessarily even going to be in camp. They're just allowed, and because they're trying out, some of these guys are even apparently trying out, like they're walk-ons at this point, for a few different teams. Like one player is trying out for a few different teams. Like they have, I don't know. I haven't followed football this closely my entire life, and I have now for the past few years, but I don't think I've ever seen anything like that before. So I thought that was kind of interesting too. So, you know, whatever. But yeah, you know, because look, there was a tweet. Dolphins have invited cornerback Javonte Dean and linebacker Mike Smith to minicamp, both still mulling their plans. So they're just like coming in to just like try out. They might not even actually end up staying. Wes Farnsworth, a long snapper from Nevada. Terrell Hankins, linebacker from New Mexico State. Motre Hardage, cornerback Northwestern. Dwayne Hendricks, defensive end Pitt. Tyler Horton, cornerback from Boise. So, I mean, you know, good though. They're bringing in offensive linemen and cornerbacks. That's good. Maybe they can find some gems, right? You know, they're going to have to if they want to have any kind of success ever. Trenton Irwin, wide receiver from Stanford. Darrell Langham, wide receiver from Miami. Rookie minicamp invite for him. Jonathan Ledbetter. Oh, he's from the Ledbetter line, I'm guessing, huh? Nice. Defensive end from Georgia. Aaron Montiero, offensive tackle from Boston College. Nick Needham, cornerback from UTEP. Rob Roll, safety from Villanova. Mike Smith, linebacker from Miami, who got a rookie minicamp invite. Trey Watson, linebacker from Maryland. Preston Williams, a wide receiver from Colorado State. So those are our undrafted free agents and so on and so forth. So look, again, you know, they do have the opportunity to prove me wrong, and a lot of these guys could rise and become, you know, staples and guys that, you know, are foundational for, you know, the next several years, and maybe they can, you know, make this. But right now, from my analysis of all the data and information that I have, it looks like it's far less likely, and a big reason is because it hinders, I believe, a lot on the patience of the fan base and the ownership. And certainly in recent years, they haven't shown to have very much of it. So I'm concerned about that. You know, I don't think, because I think certainly the odds are far more likely that we're going to have bad seasons. And if that happens, if that is the case, I feel like people are going to start jumping ship and getting all crazy about it, all up in their emotions, as they usually do, and then start wanting them, you know, everybody fired before they should be. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. That's my perspective. That's my analysis. I hope I did well enough to give you guys all of the actual facts, statistics, data, you know, that I can, to help you guys make the best decision that you can. And anyway, so with that, I'm going to end it here. I hope you guys enjoy my videos. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I'm out. I'll see y'all soon.